Hello and welcome back to You Up for More. I'm Jordana.
And I am Jared. It is so good to be back here with you, Jordana. But it's especially good to be here with one of the stars of Love is Blind Season 8. You know her, you love her. Lauren O'Brien, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Stars is crazy, but I appreciate it.
Well, you're a star.
I would say definitely one of the top stories for sure. I think the most to unpack, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I feel like with the other couples, you kind of got like the breakups seemed like totally random and completely out of nowhere. And with yours, we actually got to see like in real time, the fights, the conversations. And I think, you were with, I would say this season's very clear villain.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think that this is such a Midwest season. And I think it's obvious that there were a lot of conversations with the other couples happening off camera and they weren't being brought on camera. My fiance brought everything to the camera. Which is good. It told our story in a way that was very interesting for people, but put me in some tricky situations, obviously.
This was taped a long time ago. Everyone always talks about how Love is Blind is taped and then, years later it comes out. How long ago was this taped? And while you were taping, did you know, oh my God, I guess season 8 of a show, we all know how these things go at this point. Were you in the moment going, I'm the storyline, I'm the one? Did you feel that or no? You had no idea?
No. And so, yeah, to answer your first question, it was filmed a full year ago, last February/March. And no, I remember wrapping the season and there was a minute that I was like, what if they just pull Dave and I's story? It's kind of confusing. We went back and forth and obviously we didn't make it to the altar. So there was a minute that I was like, best of both worlds would be to have this experience, meet the people from it, and then never have it see the light of day. I really did not see it coming out the way that it was.
Really? Because I feel like it came out way better than I would imagine you would have anticipated, because I feel like everyone's pretty universally on your side, which is probably so vindicating.
Well, it comes out better.
No?
Well, I think it comes out better, right? You went through it, Lauren. I would understand, having to have your.
Oh, sorry to minimize that.
Well,
No.
I agree
I didn't
with.
take it like that.
There's a good side, bad side to all stories. Good side is everyone got to see. You got to see on camera that you're not a crazy person, which I think a lot of people in your situation would love a camera crew on the guy who won't commit but is kind of committing. Jordana, you've been in situationships. Wouldn't you pray for a Truman-style camera crew to
that
a Truman Show
best.
style,
yeah.
to capture it all, but also you're going through it. It's
Did you feel vindicated?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that there was a camera crew with, because I really at the time I totally felt crazy. I was like, I am trying to explain this in 15 different ways to see if there's a way that it will stick in your brain.
We watched. We know.
I kind of, I tried. And I remember thinking, I've never not been able to communicate through something like that with a friendship or a family or a romantic partner. It was one of the first times that it felt like I think I used the word blockage at some point. And so I really did feel crazy. And there were so many times where I was like, okay, am I the one in the wrong here? Am I looking at this? Was I too fast and loose with things? And so it is helpful to look back and have it be shown, honestly, a lot of the ways that I remember it and have people validate me.
Well, that's the reason you were so your storyline is interesting to us as a podcast, because, I mean, Jordana, we were going, Lauren's every one of our listeners. She's our emailer. She's the person we're
live texting.
Right.
Yes.
You are the person going through a situation that, I was watching it, and it's funny, I've put out a lot of TikToks, but just kind of shortened versions of what we talked about on the recaps. And it's I was what Dave is doing isn't this master manipulator. This is trope things, guys, rookie. And
rookie
to
moves,
do it while cameras are rolling, I was insulted. I'm does he not think the boyfriends of the world who watch with their girlfriends are not going to go, he's He's doing the thing.
I think a lot of women have dated a Dave.
Right.
And I cackled when you made that comment the other week about like, I'm offended as a douche. I do think that there was an element of him being like, I think he thought that the story would play out a little differently. I think he thought I would be the one to look like the person who came into this with a boyfriend. And so you're right. I don't think that he was fully trying to manipulate the situation. I just don't think he was fully seeing it for what it was.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. I mean, so like this is taped, we said a year ago, basically, right? So in that time, have you, like, when this comes out, have you spoken to him? Like, where do you guys stand? Did he apologize after seeing it? I mean, because here's the thing: in the best case scenario, if we're giving him the best possible, benefit of the doubt, maybe he's like, I really did. It really was something I just couldn't let go of. It really was something I just like couldn't get over. Is there any kind of like sense from him of, I've saw this, I've reflected, I've been yelled at by everyone in America? Is there any anything there?
Up until a few weeks ago, not really. And you see us have this conversation at the group hang where he's trying to be like, maybe I looked at things differently, and maybe we can figure this out outside of the show and this experience. And I remember thinking like, we'll see. I just didn't fully buy it at the time. And of course, nothing came of that. I do think that he's had a little bit of clarity in the last few weeks, which is great for him. But I think he understands the surface level of, okay, maybe I didn't tackle things the way that I should have. But I think that there's a lot of like deeper layers to the hurt there and what he was actually doing to me at the time.
What have you learned from watching this back? Like, are there points that you look at yourself going through this and going, like, are you kind of doing, like, listen, Dave is saying, my whole friends and family, he's dangling the friends and family as like this, like,
right
thing.
After you already bought the Trader Joe's dips.
You got all the dips.
You're already set up.
I popped off at TJ's and then nothing came of it.
That's the worst part.
Right. Yeah. Opened every
True.
dip, no return, no ability to get your money back. And so he's dangling these friends and families as a carrot as far as like for you to work towards. Do you look back and go, here's 5 things that I kind of like, because we're watching going, Lauren, enough. We're doing the same conversation again. What do you learn from this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess the first thing that I learned is I am a much better communicator than I felt at the time. Like I really felt like I was not doing a good job of getting my point across. And I look back and I was like, no, there was truly nothing I could have said or done differently. I do want to remind people, because I totally understand that if I, as a viewer, were only watching what we're watching, I would have also been like, I don't understand why she didn't leave 3 conversations ago. But this was only happening. We were only living together in Minneapolis for like a week and a half. So it wasn't like this long drawn out back and forth. There's a little context with that.
That helps him too, by the way. It wasn't 3 months of him being like, oh, my sister, she's just out of town this week. Like, that's easier to like dangle a family member too. So,
but a week and a half in Love is Blind world is like 2 years in the real
totally.
world.
Well, we can't give Lauren the credit of this is no time, and then him the credit of it's all the time in the world. I'm just saying,
Fine, yeah, right. Is there a part of you looking back being like, do you think you would have done anything differently or not really?
I mean, yes, hindsight is totally 20/20, and there's times where I look back and I'm like, I should have realized that after maybe the 3rd time that I said this to him and he wasn't really getting there with me. I kind of keep looking at it where I kept trying to see things differently and grow through this experience, and he was just kind of back to square one, and I should have picked up on that a little bit sooner. Maybe I should have been a little bit more clear too, and you see Molly do such a good job of this by just like hitting the nail on the head with him. Like, if this really was someone that you loved, you would have done some other things to help your relationship get there. I wish I would have been a little bit more direct with that. I was kind of saying it without fully saying it.
Do you think that, like, if he didn't end it, do you think you would have maybe married him?
No. I think some other things would have come up. I was just talking to one of my friends about this the other day, that I was like very thankful that this other guy almost inserted himself, and it brought out a lot of things in this relationship that maybe I wouldn't have seen. But I think at the end of the day, I think Dave really wanted to be ready for a marriage, but he just wasn't. And so that would have come up in other ways.
That was my theory throughout watching this, that Dave is faced. And I do think, I want you to tell me that we are wrong here, because it felt like Minnesota and Minneapolis played a huge kind of role as a character on this season, because it feels like it's an insular place. You see the same people at the same bars every weekend. Would you agree with that? It felt like that.
Totally. And they, casting did a really good job of making sure that we didn't have mutual friends with each other. Like, we didn't know each other, the guys or the girls. But once you started to have conversations and figure out connections, I could probably find a mutual friend with every single person on the cast, and that doesn't happen in New York.
Right.
It doesn't happen in any other big cities. So.
Especially because a lot of cities, they'll find the transplant. I moved here 2 years ago. I moved here a year ago. Minnesota, it doesn't feel like I've done shows in Minneapolis. I speak from a little bit of, and we've done, the U Up Live. We do a dating show. We hear from these places, so I knew that a little bit, but it really showed. And I do think Dave, in that part of the country, his friends are married with kids. I think he was kind of faced with those. That's where I know I should be going, but I'm doing nothing to get myself from here to there. Is that kind of the vibe?
Yeah, that's kind of how I would say. That's how I was seeing things. And you even say at one point, he is talking to my mom, and he's like, my friends are having kids. I want a kid. But there's a difference between I want a kid and I want a wife than I'm ready to be a husband. And right. I don't know if he was fully there.
It's funny, now everyone, again, like you said, hindsight's 2020. He does his opening line in the pods. What was the opening line? The shithead line. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
The what's wrong with you line, if we're going to speak frankly, honestly, openly, it is a flirt. Considering the context of you're on a dating show where you can't see each other, I get the joke. I get why someone would go, fuck off. But that's kind of the line from the douchebag in the rom-com that the person meets at first and hates at first and then ends up being with. When you hear that line, are you like, oh God, that's my bait? Because he is a type for some women.
Yeah, and it felt a lot more bantery in the moment than you see it play out. I also was just thinking about how you only see some of those red flag conversations from him and some from the other guys, but there were 16 or 15 other guys there that had opening lines that were actually much worse and much more offensive. And there's a reason we don't see them. Right. And there's a reason why they went home on day 2. So yes, Dave is being villainized for this, but there were a lot of other insane comments coming from
right. I think it's the TikTok of it all is that people see the opinion they're allowed to have on TikTok, and then it's a tidal wave. For anyone, I even said in the video, I was like, Dave's a pretty good-looking guy. You have people writing, oh, he's not good-looking. It's okay, Dave walks in a room, no one's going to go, ugh, look at what ew, oh my God. No one would do that. He is, societally a fine-looking guy, to say.
Conventionally attractive.
Sure. Right. For anyone to say that, they've basically shown their biases. So, I do think he has charm. He's a charming guy who probably has a big wide net in that area. So it never didn't make sense that you guys were getting there. Mm-hmm. Could you feel that?
Yeah, and he was definitely much more personable than you see play out. And we talk about this conversation he had with my dad and how I think it really threw him off. And I remember talking to my dad about it later, and my dad was like, no, I liked the guy. He answered questions well, and it was fun to see you two kind of together. I was worried about him being ready for marriage just based on some of the things that he said, but not about his character per se. So yeah, and of course that doesn't always fit with the story that they're telling with us, which is fine, but there was a reason we got there.
Do you think that the guy that you were seeing before you were dating, do you think that he actually really cared about that? We saw from watching it on TV, it does feel like he's just trying to get you to break up with him. But you're in the day-to-day conversations. Do you think that actually really bothered him?
Really bothered Dave?
Yeah. And his sister
The Wizard of Oz, his sister. Yeah, the magical sister that doesn't exist.
Yes, and his friends. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you think that that actually was a big deal to him?
I don't think it was, because even a couple of days before we broke up, like, he made a comment off camera, like, I'm just really overwhelmed, but I don't really give a shit who you hooked up with, which then is why, like, those are the little comments why I continue to kind of move things along with him, and then why you see me just get frustrated by the time that he brings it up for the fourth or fifth time. So I don't think that, I think it bothered him that he was hearing about it and his most important people were in his ear about it. But I don't think it was like the act itself.
Do you think, and we see this as viewers, and it feels like it's the case, that like there's a point where someone says, I don't want to get married, but now I got to plan my exit. Is that kind of what you look back on and see, like, oh, this was the exit, this was the lever, the situationship guy was the lever he pulled, kind of?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I even know
Which
the
is,
situation.
I think the most offensive thing.
What's that?
I think that's the most
I
offensive.
agree.
That's the most offensive part of it, because instead of, it's so much more courageous, and like, I think you don't know what we say this all the time. You can break up with someone for any reason at any point. That's your complete right, for any reason that you want. The part that's so infuriating, to, I'm sure, Lauren, to me, and to probably the women watching, is this idea that you're now in this like mental game where you're trying to figure out what you've done wrong, because the person is allowing you to think that so that they can feel like a better person. They can feel like they're not a bad person for making someone feel bad because they broke up with them. They can turn themselves into the victim. And that's really what happens so often. That's so infuriating. And I think that's really why this story has moved everyone watching and why it was selected to be highlighted, because it's just so relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he would have come to me on camera and said, I'm really overwhelmed with everything, I don't know how to process this information, and I don't know how to get to a place of marrying you in 2 weeks. So, like, for that reason, I'm out. I would have totally respected that, but that wasn't the approach. It was my fault. It was my family. I'm in the wrong.
And you haven't done enough to go meet
Yes.
the great wizard, my sister. Yeah,
Correct.
Right. My sister doesn't meet just anyone.
Not just
My
anyone.
sister doesn't.
Definitely not a fiance.
Right, her time cannot be wasted. She has things to do. I even heard a little birdie told me that the situationship, like, this guy, like, he wasn't that serious a guy. I mean, he's kind of, to me, I've heard he's in the Dave realm himself. Not to like he's like kind of reaching out.
Do you have a type, Lauren?
I mean, you might have a type, because he's kind of reaching out to places to be like, I'll come on to talk about it if you want, but he doesn't want his identity revealed because his job might be in jeopardy. It's like, what a bullshit. Like, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of like, I'll come on and I'll be the tea giver. Let me pour some tea, but make sure you change my voice and my face. It's like, are you in for the mess? Or are you not? I don't know. Have you heard these things as well?
I haven't. Yeah.
And he's also like revealed himself. I don't understand how he's put himself out there
The
way more
situationship.
than. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you feel like, how do we get away from these guys, Lauren? What do we do? Are the DMs open? Are you
How can we help?
Because we've established a track record of douchebaggery and Lauren, being into it.
I get it. I've been there.
I
get it. Yeah. Yeah. The rite of passage. Yeah.
No, this is why I've gathered us all here today. That was what I have learned the most, is I need to have a little bit of a better picker. I don't quite know how to do that yet, but at least I'm aware. It's a good start.
Right. I think there's always something a little bit attractive about someone holding you a little bit at arm's length, or like, at least that's historically been my type as well.
That's the game. That's the fun of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, then, you're kind of self-sabotaging into not being able to get into like a real secure, safe, long-term relationship. So it's tough.
I do want to ask you about the future and like what dating's like now and what we're doing, but I want to go back to one thing. You're kind of our correspondent now. You're giving us the inside view. You didn't get to the altar. We watched 3 out of 4 just disasters, and like I was shocked. I was kind of shocked with how it went down. I was shocked to see 3 women who seem to like really do the math on this, kind of like, okay, I've done the math. It didn't work out. I'm not getting these, where I need to go, and goodbye. And how does the process work if we just like you and Dave, you said, do you have to go to the altar? Like,
are the producers like, you must dump them at the altar if you're going to dump
them? Because I mean, Sarah's dumping to me was cold and harsh. Like, and so was I think it's always cold and harsh to leave. We said this about Clay and AD. It's like, doesn't matter the gender. Like, it feels like a little disrespectful to let someone put on the dress, put on the suit. To let the friends and family take their Saturday. You get 52 Saturdays a year. Some random dude you went to college with has to get dressed up and go to some fucking cabin. I'd be so mad.
Right.
For your
that's what I'm saying. I assume
big production.
I assume that they're like that the producers are to encourage that to happen. That's where you say no.
Yeah. What are they saying?
You can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, I could have left on day 4 of the pods if I wanted to, or I could have left in Honduras. Like, we were not, held at gunpoint or anything like that. But I do think that there is an element of every day in this process felt like a year. And like, you just felt like that in the relationship and how much you grow as a person and with this significant other. And so I do think that there's an element of like, okay, let's see how our relationship can progress up until like the very end. Right. Maybe we can get there. I definitely think that that's an element of it. I also think the reunion will be interesting for you guys to watch and see some of the conversations come up that maybe weren't being brought to light on camera at the time, but help make things a little bit more sense after the fact.
But without mentioning those conversations, like, we can only see what we saw. Like, you get to the altar, like, you could have done it in the bridal suite before you got up there. I do, and like, I actually
like the wedding singer.
Right.
This could have been brought to my attention yesterday.
Right. And it's like, so in the same way, like, bringing up the sister over and the situationship over and over again is offensive. It's not doing it once and being like, I'm kind of like annoyed about the situationship. I think we should end it. It's going all the way to the end and having this big display where you've kind of embarrassed someone who you're supposed to care about. But I guess something you said makes a lot of sense. The idea that because there is this end date, you just want to like play it out. You have an ending. Most relationships don't have a date on the calendar where they have a talk planned for what we're gonna do here. So it does does make, and it might help a lot of relationships. Like, if you just like first date, you're like, okay, 1 month we're gonna mark conversation day because that's the day decisions have to be made. So like, it does make sense that you're like trying and trying again because you're like, the date's coming. It does make sense that he'd be like, yeah, my sister can't make it on Thursday, maybe on Wednesday, maybe on next week, like with knowing that like, okay, I'll have this out coming, so. But like, what do you think makes someone like, you have that wedding coming, you guys break up, but like, how many days later was this altar experience supposed to happen where invitations sent out? Like, was there any thought that you would get to the altar or how you would get out if you didn't want to say yes? Would you go to the altar, Lauren?
There were a lot of moments where I saw myself going to the altar. I wouldn't say I was 100% like marriage or no marriage at the time. I was just so open to the experience because I saw myself. I mean, I shocked myself that I got to a place emotionally with Dave that I was ready to get engaged to him. And then going to Honduras and telling friends and family, I really did surprise myself with how quickly I had gotten there. And so I just remember being like, if I trust this process, who knows how I could feel 2 weeks from now based on conversations that we're having and meetups that are happening. So I wasn't totally ready to be done with that idea. I was more trusting of that.
But did you have a plan for like an escape plan? Like, were you like, if it's a no before the, if I'm not sure before the altar, I'm not going to go to the altar. Like we watched 3 different people, but 4 different couples go to the altar. Like, I don't know. I feel like,
or were you like, or were you kind of like, I'll see how I feel tomorrow, which is another year in this world.
Yeah, but I totally think I would have not wanted to I would have not walked into wedding day being unsure what I was going to say and what he was going to say. I would have been confident in how we were feeling. That being said, though, it's hard to look at that, though. And
why do you think I know, easier said than done, but like, Why do you think the other couples did it the way they did it?
That's a good question. I will say, I'm going to defend Sarah. It's interesting. I kind of see the word harsh in terms of how you see it play out right now.
Sure.
I think that there's going to be more that comes up at the reunion and after the fact, that there's another way to look at it.
Okay. Which is fair after the reunion and things come up, but like it did from this vantage point, it looked like someone who wanted to like make this guy look bad in front of his friends and family. And it's like, if no matter what's done to me, I don't know. I don't know if like I would play that out as far as like if I
Grandma can't get that day back.
right. Grandma has you're right. This is like grandma traveled here.
She got who knows how many days she's got
for
left.
my revenge moment that I'm going to explain on an after show. I don't know. That doesn't really. I don't know what I could find out that would make me look at. Listen. I'm allowing for things to be.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
But
right?
I'm saying like of the things that I don't know. Understand how much I would have to be wronged to get grandma in on my big revenge. Leave them at the altar moment. I don't know.
I didn't see it as a revenge moment, but maybe that's just me.
What about you bring up Honduras. What about him polling the room on who's had sex and not had sex? Did you know that was going on?
Did you just fill out my doodle?
Okay. I didn't know that explicit conversation that was happening.
You didn't know. He didn't. But did you feel that from him that he wanted to get physical? And you brought up you went for a waxing, which seems to be like every woman has ever in the history of women has used that as a like, let's cool this off.
A couple of things. First, and I've clarified this before, but I was not referring to sex when I talked about my bikini wax. We were talking about what we were doing.
Stuff?
I was talking about a workout class.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I was like,
editors did you dirty then? I feel that was definitely made to look like you were talking about sex.
I put that on my Instagram.
Wait, explain this. I'm an idiot guy. I don't know what we're talking about.
Okay, so between the pods in Honduras, we have a couple of days to kind of like get our shit together and shop and do whatever. And I was like, I'm going on a beach vacation, need a bikini wax.
My fiance,
with my fiance. I was like mid bikini wax, and I had also scheduled a spin class for that night, which I hadn't worked out in weeks, so I was pumped. And she's telling me these are the things you can't do for 24 hours. You can't have sex, you can't work out, you can't, I don't know, she gave me a list. And so I had to cancel the spin class. And so Dave and I were talking about what we had been doing the last couple of days, and I had shared that, and the way they spliced it to make it seem like, oh, I'm so bummed we can't have sex. That's not what I said.
Oh.
That's annoying. So, yeah. I would be annoyed too.
Well, that's annoying for everyone involved. Like, because it makes it makes you seem like you can't have this conversation, like without like using the bikini wax as an excuse. It makes him seem like this, like, because I see the commenters, a lot of them are like, oh, he couldn't have sex, so he's like raging, like he's the Incredible Hulk, and then they show him questioning everyone. About whether they're having sex.
And it's not like we weren't like exploring, like, okay, the whole point was exploring the physical side of things. Like that was happening, but it was funny to know. I had a couple conversations with guys in Honduras about just like Dave in general, and a few of them asked me, what's it like that Dave just kind of speaks his mind and doesn't filter things? He's
the Trump of season 8.
Yeah. I was like, what is he saying that I don't know about? Like, I immediately it gave me some pause.
Right. And the letter that you wrote to his sister, that he never gave her, was that, to me, that would have been like probably like the most eye-opening. Then you talk about that kind of after the breakup when you're like, what happened there? You told him you were wanted to give him this letter, and he just said, I'm not giving it to her. Like, what happened?
So, yeah, good question. So obviously at this point, his sister was hearing all of these things about me, and I wasn't allowed to be part of any of the conversations. And so I wrote her this like 4-page handwritten letter, just kind of explaining a little bit of the backstory and timeline and trying to have my voice be part of it. But then I also am sure she was worried that like Dave went on this and found this kind of fake connection. And I wanted to be like, no, like this felt very real for me. And so I was elaborating on that.
I'm eye rolling right now so hard because it's like this is why
I can feel it.
Well, because this is why you probably feel lucky there was a camera set up to make you feel like you weren't crazy, because this is like the guy uses this excuse, and then you're like, well, it's just so funny. Like, whenever my dad's always said this, he's like, the only one who
you have like a whole bit about this.
What's that? I mean,
you have a whole bit about like what the lengths men will go to avoid
saying
like
anything. Right. My dad always said, he's like, the only one who gets fucked is the honest one. And it's like, yeah, you're being honest. Like, I'll write a letter. I'll meet her for high tea. I'll do anything. And he's like, oh yeah,
then she'll get it.
Right. And then he's like, yeah, write a letter. And he thinks that you're bullshitting. And he's like, it gets him off the hook for a day, which you've said feels like a year. And then you come back with a letter, and he's like, oh, I guess you did that. Like there's.
So what did he do with the letter?
So okay, and I will say, like, I put the ball in his court.
Look what this bitch did. She actually wrote a letter. They're all laughing at the bar.
You're so
I'm
mean.
sorry. I just think it's he's such a bullshitter that I'm just sitting here being like, the letter. He's gonna put on his He's gonna put on his mailman outfit and deliver it to his sister.
But I want to know what he did. What did he do when confronted with the letter?
So I gave it to him and I said, "This is your family, and I know you're going." He was like going to see them, but I'd really love for you to pass this along. And so he put it in his jacket pocket, and he got home that night. And the next day, I was leaving for work, and I was just like, I had a gut feeling that letter never left his jacket pocket. And so I checked, and sure shit, it was there.
This is what I'm talking about.
Okay.
You wrote the letter. Cool. And he's going to act
That's
like
crazy. Did you guys ever talk about the letter after that?
It comes up at the reunion, but that's about it.
You didn't say, you weren't like, hey, did you give her like that 4-page letter?
That was like 2 days later. I spell checked that. So it just wasn't. I put that through ChatGPT and everything.
Oh my God.
I love that Jordana's obsessed with this letter, and to me it is the most hilarious. Like it's a gimmick. It's all it's all like fairy dust, because it's like you thought he was going to bring this letter to his family, they're all going to read it. She is a good woman. Mm-hmm. Like, no, you were a good woman before. You didn't need a letter to be a good woman. Like, this is.
Well, I mean, someone commented on our YouTube, because people are obviously enraged at what he's doing. And then someone commented that, like, you were actually like the best opponent for him, because you kind of like let him hang himself with the rope. Mm-hmm. By not engaging, or by not fighting him, or like you don't do anything below the belt. You like communicate very openly. You communicate really well. Like, he looks so bad because you didn't give him anything to work with. You weren't like screaming at him. You weren't crying. I mean, You've seen that in other episodes where the women sometimes have like mental breakdowns, especially when they're about to get married and someone's like treating them really horribly. But I was kind of like, well, she's got to break up with him. She's doing all this stuff to avoid doing.
Right. It's such a good point too, because when you're just being honest. Like, and we say this on the podcast all the time, like, just say, I'd love to go out next week. Make a time, make a plan, and I'm in. This is a text we give out to people. Like, when they're like texting with someone over and over and they're like, they won't make a plan. We're like, just say, hey, I get it. Things are busy. Make a plan. I'm in. And then they're left to lie again. Like, they're left to find the way to not make a plan. And you're like, well, in what world? You all next week. So what about the week after? And it's like, right? Like, right. And that's how this person gets to look like a clown. And that's why Dave is so easy to kind of like, step on at this point. And I say that kind of with empathy for him. He really is a trope. Like,
yeah. Looking back, and I've seen comments about this too, and part of me does wish that I would have been the one to put the nail in the coffin, but at the same time, it's like, no, I think the way he approached things, it showed the character that he had at that time. And so it made it a little easier for people to be on my team.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, again, you looked great. You looked super calm. There was no like low blows. Right. There was nothing like that. You seemed very mature.
Well, to compare it to another season, when we look at what's the woman that dealt with the guy who was living with her parent, the kicker living with his parents,
Hannah and Nick.
Hannah, because I do think it is. I'm like putting this all together on the fly as we're talking, but like again, someone could freak out and become Hannah. Like you said, Lauren, you go, there's a point where
or Chelsea,
like there's a point where you knew that this, or now know that like he wanted out and this is the route he took. And then instead of like being like enraged by this, you're like, here's a letter. Let me meet your sister. Like it wasn't like like a lot of people would go, tell your sister to go fuck herself. She's a piece of shit. If I'm not good enough for her, then she must have a real issue with herself. Like and then you would have been embroiled in this totally. She's mean to the family. Like I've seen comments from people being like, I just got a message actually, a red flag deal breaker, that someone's like, I'm dating a guy who agrees with Dave and not being with someone who was dating someone.
Dump him.
And that's a deal breaker. Like, it's just like a crazy, like, you're living in the morality of an internet commenter, because internet commenters need, like, well, they hooked up 3 days ago and that was black and white. And it's like, no, that's bullshit. But are you dating now? So what's the dating been like since the show? You end it with him. Do you go back out there? Are you going through a breakup? What's going on in, like, the month after you guys end?
And the month after, I processed through that breakup so much.
She got 4 weddings to go to. She got no time to process.
She watched 3 people ended at the altar. How bad could her life be?
Sorry,
I was busy being an emotional support person for the next couple of months. No, I processed through it so quickly. Like even the days after the fact, I saw things with a lot more clarity, which helped me kind of get over things.
Easy come, easy go type of thing. Like,
exactly.
Okay.
I dated a little bit and like, on Hinge and things like that, but I don't know. There was part of me looking back that thought about, okay, how would I have a partner and then watch this back and kind of go through the motions again a little bit. And then, I don't know. I just wasn't
also
sure
not
what that
knowing
was going to look like.
How you're going to be portrayed. Right. Yeah. I would could see. Can you imagine living a year without knowing what your edit's going to be like?
It would haunt me every night.
Every day. Yeah.
I live in fear of these podcasts coming out, a week later.
I did have a little sense, just kind of, again, based on other conversations that I had had later on with people. But no, I'm not dating right now, or I'm not dating right now. I'm not in a relationship right now. Like I said, I think I need to reevaluate some of my dating decisions and maybe make a better game plan moving forward. But that's as far as I've gotten.
How is it being in Minneapolis? What's it like now? I mean, we mentioned the insular nature of the area.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I've been gone for both like work things and then some Love is Blind things. But I was in town last weekend and went out with some friends from the show and then like some friends from here. And the amount of women that came up to me with the same sentiment of, I've dated a Dave. Like, I wanted to give you a hug this whole season. Can I give you a hug? Can I buy you a shot? Like, they were so kind and so sweet. And then a lot of guys, too, being like, I need to send this to my girlfriend. But other than that, I don't know. We'll see. I think it really does highlight, though, how small Minneapolis is throughout the last couple of weeks, kind of going out and trying to live my normal life, but not knowing how to reevaluate
and
that.
The smallness of an area is really not, someone wrote to me, they were like, there's 800,000 people in their 20s. And it's like, go fuck yourself. No, the smallness of an area is, do people move into it? Do people move out of it? Like, people don't move into this area unless they're from there or went to high school there or whatever it is. It's generally not a, hey, this new hot shot from DC just got here. It's just not like that, right?
Right. And there's so many suburbs surrounding Minneapolis, St. Paul area. So many people grow up 30 minutes outside of the city, and it's kind of a best case scenario for them because then they move into the city in their 20s and 30s, but are still kind of close to family and still have that piece of things. So it's really not.
They got the lake house thing going on. Everyone's got a lake house. Everyone's got a northern place to go to, and it's. I wouldn't leave there if I had like mom doing laundry at home. Person? Yeah, maybe I should move in. Well, if I had mom doing laundry at home, Dave, he's got his his sister doing his laundry. He's got probably the cabin up north. He's got. He goes to the bars and he's a hot shot who can put a few words together. Like, so what's wrong with you, Toots? And
why would he leave?
I would never leave. This guy's living in heaven. This is,
What made you want to go on the show?
I kind of felt like the token single friend in Minneapolis for the last like 7 years. I've just been mostly single. I've had a couple short-term relationships, but nothing super long. And timing wise, I was kind of fresh out of a breakup when the casting call came out. And from there, it really was more like, I'm putting this in the universe's hands, because you have a phone call and then you have a Zoom call, and you're kind of just like seeing how things play out.
That's not how Dave's sister saw it. You wanted fame.
I wanted that. Can't you tell?
That was the best when your mom was like, Lauren is so boring. Why would anyone think that she wanted to be famous?
I have said so many times that I'm too boring for reality TV. So the fact that I'm in this position is still so fucking funny to me. But
you're the most
normal. I think it's more like you're normal.
Yeah.
You seem like well adjusted.
You're the most relatable person on the show for a reason, because you are relatable. You know, when everyone's like bad edit, it's like, no. Like, even what you're saying right now, you're like, I've been the friend. I'm sick of being the bridesmaid. Like, you're a rom-com. You are a rom-com. Like, it's, and I hope you take that with, like, all the compliments in the world. Like, you know, it is, when you say, like, I didn't want to be the friend anymore, I'm taking this bold main character move that I would never take. And I think that's so cool. And, like, I think so many people get such shit for going on reality shows, and it's all the person giving the shit is all biased, all bullshit, because we grew up in an age of like wild people going on these shows. Like, I get it. How old are you now, Lauren?
31.
So at the time you're 30. Hey, why not take a resume? I'll do a self-tape. Oh, a Zoom call. It kind of like, it's a snowball.
Yeah. And it gets to a point that you're like, how would I, this is such a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, you're telling me that they interviewed tens of thousands of people and they want me to do this. How would I say no to that? Like, there's totally an element of that too.
Are you happy you went on?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. I learned a lot. I gained a lot from it. Shakes things up a little bit. So
for sure. Very cool experience, I'm sure. And like,
what are you looking forward to now?
Probably surreal.
Are you? Is there something you're looking forward to? Is there a trip coming up? What's going on in Lauren O'Brien's life?
I have fun trips like outside of the show coming up this year. Like, my mom and I are going to go to Italy in the fall for her 60th birthday. My friends that you met on the show are getting married in New Orleans in the fall, and we have like their bachelorette party in Nashville. There's just a lot of like fun celebrations happening this year. And so I'm just excited to do all of that stuff.
We love it.
Awesome.
Well, this is so nice.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, this was so great. It really does help to get a lot of the context behind everything. And you seem great. And if we're ever in Minneapolis, if we do a Minneapolis show, we know
where to go.
I'll be there.
And do you want people to slide into your DMs? Do you want guys? Are you kind of like, you know, if a guy's out there, are you asking for that or not really? Are you having that happen?
Have you had that? Yeah. There's
a little bit, but like, I don't think it's like, right now I'm not jumping at the opportunity to respond to someone's DM. I'm not against it, but I just haven't seen that be something that I'm going to dive into right now.
That means you're the perfect person to message, you know, like someone who doesn't want it, and, you know, maybe a guy will. It's
got to woo her.
The guy comes out of the woodwork to woo. Yeah, we want to. So to anyone listening, you better come wooing.
Bring it.
Well, that's amazing. Lauren, thank you for coming on. Jordana, we did it again. This was a lot of fun.
We did it. We'll be back with more. Are you up for more later? Bye. Kate McAuliffe is our senior producer. Our editor is Emily Freed. Candace Maniga is our senior social producer. Our associate producer is Will Maxwell. Additional production help from Shannon Jimenez Sasson. Be sure to follow us at u.up.podcast and send us your emails to uup@betches.com.